isn't it? Like,
Well, no, this is so 2020.
That's true. By 2020, we'd all be on the
2020,
screen.
we'd all be on the
Yeah,
screen.
yeah, exactly.
And somebody could have some kids in the background dog barking.
Yeah, that would have been my
Okay,
Yeah.
we're getting better.
Just kidding.
Okay, so do we want to do Zoom first, intros?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so Maya, left to right?
Okay, I can't tell where I am, but
Yeah, you're like, am I left?
so I'm Maya Beasley. I wear a few different hats, but I run a DEI and ESG consulting
Oh,
company, and am slowly but surely also working on an ESG platform for CSR and as well as private markets.
fantastic. Great.
Fantastic, and I can provide more context if you need. Okay, Ted.
Hi, I'm Ted Milner. I run Executive Temps, which is an entertainment employment agency. Been servicing the industry for a little over 30 years. My wife and I also run an internship program with HBCUs and interning those students within the entertainment industry. And in a nutshell, that's what I do.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ted.
Okay.
Yeah, and my name is Lemire Walker. I only shook my head before because Kevin is so humble, but he does an excellent job of framing these conversations. Over the years, I've gotten to know him. So that's all I was doing, was just saying, no, that's not true, Kevin. You did a great job as usual. So I am a designer at heart. I'm currently with Origin Foundation, a Swiss nonprofit focused on capturing human ingenuity through the blockchain. And so we focus on capturing physical and digital artifacts of value. And so I'm helping them build out products as well as build out the team members. And I've always been focused on the team dynamics. And that's where Kevin and I connected when I was with a startup called Valence that I helped build and exit a few months ago. So
Did you hear what you said?
You started Valence. Do you know Michelle Cho from Gladio?
oh yeah.
Oh my
Oh, yeah.
goodness. She,
Oh, yeah.
She has raved about you and the Valence group, and she's like, you need to know the players there. So wow, this is such a small world. Okay. I'm like, Michelle, that's amazing.
Yeah, I think maybe I'll see you at their launch event.
I know we will. That's amazing. Wow. Okay. Well, we'll sidebar about that. Okay.
Okay. You want to start with me?
Yes,
Okay.
please
All right.
do.
Well, I'm Kevin Clark, Dakar Foundation for the Performing Arts. We've been in business as a 501c3 for the last 31 years. Our vision is to try and get more people acclimated with the process of getting into workforce. We're really interested in trying to figure out how to get our federal registered apprenticeship program, just newly minted, to become the first in the state to focus on new emerging Web3.
That's amazing. Wow.
Ramon?
I'm Will Williams. I'm an apprentice for Dakar since I think late May. I went to the AME conference for the
Yes.
past few days, and I recorded a lot of the video there and edited into like a 1-minute YouTube video, which I'm not sure if Kevin's shown you yet.
I did see
Yeah.
it. Yes.
But yeah, that's
Awesome.
what I got so far.
And he's a senior at Cal State Northridge.
Senior Kelsey. I remember this now. I remember you have your blazer on today, but I was like, I remember.
Yeah,
Like the young lady who was the host,
Yes,
like aspiring
Nancy.
actress. Yeah. Okay.
stuff there.
Awesome.
So Terrence Coles, so I'm currently Chief Revenue Officer at a small AI tech startup called Wow Yow down in San Diego. I've spent the last 4 years at Redbox, and I was the Senior Director of all the digital media called the Media Network. It was part of the ability to get them acquired by Chicken Soup for the Soul and build out the digital infrastructure for their flip to AVOD and free live TV. So, but I've been in digital media. I was at AOL in '96, and I've
Were
been
you part
around
of the
technology.
merger with
So that flipped, and I was in video on demand
I
early
see,
and
yes.
licensing of video content
Oh
from
my
Warner. I was in
goodness.
product placement. So I've been on a lot,
Nerd.
done those kind of things, and
Oh my
really lately
goodness.
it's been working in digital media technology
Yeah.
and in the AI space, applying that to media.
Yeah.
And so part of that is then looking at mocap, animation, digital media, Web3.
Mhm.
So we're building products there and looking at folks like Damone to be able to train,
Yeah.
even starting here in more of a 2D production,
I see.
frame, but how do we take those skills
Okay.
and apply them to, we want to be an animator, right? So one of the ideas might be how do you transition from traditional production video skills
Right.
to what it's going to be for animation.
Yeah.
And animation right now is we're talking about mocap.
Mhm.
We're using artificial intelligence to
Yes.
look at markerless motion capture. So
Mhm.
these are some of the things that we hope to bring to bear, and also hopefully leverage from a studio perspective. I'm going to little mocap studios over
Yeah,
here, and you
yeah.
have big facilities. How do you bridge that gap
Right.
for someone that's coming from an apprentice program to figure out what real work experiences are going to look like
I
moving
see.
forward.
I see. Fantastic. Wow. Oh, it's so impressive. My goodness. Yeah. And humble. I get it.
Yep.
So are
Well,
you
we
all
also,
sort of-
Kevin's got me to show up and do stuff for the last 20 years, whether it was at
Oh,
Compton High School or LA Mission College, you taught a
Oh,
class,
amazing.
and
Yeah.
we just continue to just do the work and pour into hopefully folks. I think we find a way
Got it.
to find folks like Damone and not necessarily teach about the thing, but
Got
really
it.
talk about how do you get into an employment pipeline? How do
Got
we
it.
work? Ultimately, we'd like to put
Yeah.
some of the folks that go through this to
Mhm.
work at places like this, and they need to understand
Yeah.
all of the ins and outs, and folks like Ted can help them interview,
Right,
but how do you
right.
help them, when they get here?
Yes.
It's a very different
Yeah,
world.
the persistence, right? Like persisting through beyond just getting the job, right?
Well, because how do you thrive, right?
Exactly.
I mean, you could get in the door and be a PA.
Mhm.
Might be the way to get in the door, but how do you thrive? I mean, the corporate infrastructure here, it's crazy.
That's
And
crazy. Yes.
and across the
Yeah.
entertainment business, but how do they get experiences to understand what you might have to go through to thrive and be there 20, 30 years from now?
Yeah. And as a follow-up, I'd love to connect you with like Karen Horn. Have you connected with anybody from our other, I know our function is CSR, but we do have a CSR group, and we also have a DEI group, and they run a lot of these programs. So we're all sort of a mouthpiece for each other to talk about like different programs we're all running. So I can give you a little bit of that sort of how it's set up, and then kind of delve into areas that you think would be helpful for this conversation.
Wow,
Yeah.
yeah, but we'd like to learn.
Yeah, I mean, so just a little bit about myself, and Christine, do you want to start by introducing yourself?
Yeah, I'm a newer assistant here at Warner's. I came back, I was here for 8 years, and then I worked on the theatrical side of labor relations. And left for like 2 years during pandemic, and came back in the last month, and I was lucky enough to get on with Michael Walbrecht, who's the government affairs side, and of course Sally Chan, who does the community engagement side.
So I've been in the CSR space for 22 years now. I started off at Disney for 11 years, did a lot of the supply chain management, human rights kind of work, and then decided to transition over to Warner Brothers because I realized it's like that's sort of a niche focus under the CSR umbrella. So since I've been here, I've done everything from cause marketing to investor relations, you name it, employee giving program, I've done it. So before they called it CSR, I was like, now people study it in school. It's really wild to me. But yeah, so 22 years. And so more recently, we've been asked to really focus on like our productions and their footprint out in communities, because I don't think it's a secret, but our shows obviously receive a tax incentive from different states to draw us to different locations, because it creates jobs and everything, and that's really our government affairs side of the business. And so our team is really tasked to go out into the community and showcase how we're either helping training, like the workforce development. So again, how are we creating a sort of filming friendly community? Of course, the business justification for what we do, but how do you set up an infrastructure so that our industry can thrive in areas beyond LA, right? Obviously Atlanta being a huge hub, New York, other areas too, like where we have a show, or Baltimore, kind of Chicago, New Orleans. And so it's nothing new, right? Like everybody knows what community engagement, community affairs is, but I think our take is a little bit unique because we're trying to work with the film office. We're trying to work with local community leaders just to understand baseline, what are unique issues for your community? And if there is a barrier to true like workforce development, like what is that barrier? Is it that people don't even understand the jobs that are available? So we do a lot of career workshops so people know what is a DP, right? Like what does an assistant director do? What are the different union pathways you need to like get on to even be considered and get the hours for these jobs? And I think it's just raising awareness of the whole economy, the creative economy that exists within this business. Because you talk to young folks and they're like, I want to be an actor, I want to be a director. And you're like, that's great. And there's a career path for that, really hard, but there's a career path, but there's a whole business, like, you know, on this lot alone, right? We're our own city. We have a fire department, we have a police department, we have everything. And so how do you make that accessible and like even that knowledge available, right? To folks who are like, oh, I thought entertainment industry was just what we see in front of this screen. And so I think that's what we're trying to shift. And I think what's great is it's a multi-pronged approach. It's our group, it's CSR, it's, you know, DEI. So it is more integrated into the business versus it's just like one department who's trying to handle that. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So hopefully that gives a little bit of a sort of
Yeah, it gives me a lot.
overview.
I'm going to toss it to you guys, starting with Maya. Any thing that you want to comment on based on what you've heard?
I mean, not so much because I think first we should sort of talk about what the program is that we're pitching, although I am really keen on hearing more about how much of the impact you want to measure and what the scope is, and how scalable you would want to make something, because I think, you know, with this group, you could do something that's sort of small and a relatively small pilot, or you could make it something that's considerably larger in, you know, in multiple communities. So it really depends on what you're looking for.
I mean, I'll take a stab at. So part of the idea was looking at Dakar as a digital media agency, Web3, however you want to look at it,
I see. Okay.
and looking at Damone as a resource, right? So he's our video producer. He was the shot, edited, created that. And his apprentice program allows him
Yes.
to deliver that. So we'd love
Yes.
to have you as a client,
Mhm.
and we had AME as our first test client that we shot here, right?
I see.
And
Okay.
Damone walked through the process with help from myself and his
Mhm.
instructor and Rupert Shimane and other folks who all gave feedback to Damone in order to deliver a product
Yeah.
on time, on schedule,
Yeah.
and that the client was happy with.
Right. Right.
And so that's the piece, at least beginning.
Yes.
And we'd love to say, if we could end up having a commitment to say, okay, well, once a month for the next 12 months or so,
Mhm.
we'll do a project for one.
Yeah.
You pick what it is,
Yeah.
the rest, and whether it's coming here while you have an event and shooting it,
Yeah.
something that's happening in LA, footage that you have from what you have going on in Georgia and pulling that out, but an
Yes.
idea that on a monthly basis,
Mhm.
we might be able to treat you as a real client
Right. Right.
and say, how do we deliver value back for you as a client and
Right.
have our apprentices
Got it.
deliver that work for you.
Got it. Okay.
That they just as a simple ask, and again, framing that as whatever that makes sense from a dollar value that allows us to then put, you know, money in the pocket of the apprentices, and then and also some of the apprentices are being paid by the state or the feds. In Damone's case,
Mhm.
there's like a gap, so the
Mm.
foundation covered his gap
Ah,
financially while he was out of the window for city funding,
Right. City
right,
and
and
county,
county funding.
yes.
Okay, so you get city
And
county
county
funding.
funding, yes.
Okay.
And it is really for us to kind of thread the eye of the needle because
Mhm.
it's based on not only age, but socioeconomic status.
Mm.
Some of the monies go to people who are literally out of school,
Yeah.
underemployed, under-resourced. That's the biggest pot of money we've found,
Okay.
18 to 24. They're maybe not the most likely candidates for an apprenticeship program, but that's what the city of LA and the prevailing winds are saying, push those groups of people.
Mm.
Well, that was hard though. That created the gap. I mean, ultimately, if you look at it,
Yeah.
because Damone is in college,
Mhm.
about to graduate, has been here, then unfortunately, it creates a gap. Not that there wasn't funding being allocated for the pool that Damone's in, but
Yeah.
there's gaps in terms of some of those folks who may not fall into our apprenticeship lane.
Right.
So we have to find alternate means of funding.
Yeah.
bottom line. So that's why we're looking at
I see.
state, federal, county, local, in order to maintain a pipeline
Yeah.
of prospects.
Yeah.
With the one being prospect number one, like the
Yeah.
alpha use case, if you will.
Right. Right.
And
right.
it happened here,
Yeah.
and thank you,
Yes.
because
yes,
that provided the
yes.
opportunity. So I think we're back to say, you know, how do we get, even from a grassroots perspective,
Mm.
a place to operate out of, to start to build a program, to do
Right.
something that way, and then, you know, hopefully build upon that with other approaches.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing that we found is that we have to be very precise about how we create these entities, this infrastructure for like the apprenticeship program that we federally registered. There's a state side.
Mhm.
Well, the state side is a little bit more difficult to curate all the things we have to do for the standards and all the things we have to deliver. we have to partner with a community college,
Yeah. Yeah.
not a four-year university.
Mhm.
And we have to be able to have a community college that is forward-thinking enough that will work with us.
Yeah.
And
Because
we
they
found that.
have to provide the curriculum
Mm.
that would be approved by the DAS.
Well, it's
what's the-
it's the Department of Education and the Career Tech Ed.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
those are the things that we got to be very precise in meeting those things. So we've, been in discussion with Santa Monica College because of the community colleges. They have become really the alpha on how they can look at workforce, the gap between education, workforce, and what we believe is what is the missing piece in delivering something that gives people a chance to go beyond the internship. The
Yeah.
apprenticeship experience is what I think is ripe for a developed internship program that they have. So they have two different things that we are interested in, which is a promo pathway program.
Yeah.
Lemur knows a lot about that, but they also have the first 4-year Bachelor of Science interactive design program.
At Santa Monica. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you talking to any other college or is Santa Monica?
Oh, we're talking to all of them. We are involved with all 19 LA community colleges and in LA County, and then the 9 in LA City.
Okay.
So the LA Promise, are you familiar with
yeah.
LA Promise?
Yes.
So we are taking a couple of people from LA Promise.
Oh, you are.
As
Okay, good. Good
apprentices.
to know.
Well, they're going to be pre-apprentice.
Okay.
Right.
So the pipeline.
So the
Yeah.
pipeline is education to pre-apprenticeship, internship, apprenticeship, employment.
Mm.
And again, so I think that's part of the idea and trying to figure out those pathways falling back from employment, right? What are the requirements? So one of the things I was providing for the whole program is saying, well, I have the job description of a person that we hired. So I was explaining that we just took an intern from UCSD. And she worked for us. She was a theater marketing intern, and she just became our marketing coordinator at our AI tech company. And so I was like, well, hey, I know how that works. I know how we took her from that to get employed. How we got her was, just being local in San Diego.
Right.
And she's not necessarily from the same community that we're talking about trying to necessarily help, but we believe there's a pathway to connect the dots on. And that's why I think we'd like some, someone to build the whole pipeline.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I can share a little bit about programs that we do currently have in place. I feel like there's a way to kind of fit this either into existing programs or expand upon ones that we have. So in Burbank, we had commissioned a study of the community, and they said, it's great, you guys are here, we see the water tower, but how do we get our young folks to actually work beyond that wall, right? And so we're like, okay, yeah, obviously there's a barrier and there's not access. So we created a program called REACH, where we're taking graduating high school seniors who are going off to community college or a 4-year, accredited college, and giving them, 4 internships every summer, right? Beginning right after high school. And that way they have a little bit of experience in marketing and finance, but this is the business of entertainment side. We do have a production track. It's like limited to kind of like one intern, but that way they get to understand all different facets of the business, and with the hope that we're converting at least 50% into a full-time role.
Okay.
In addition, not only do they get paid, but they also get an honor, like a scholarship towards school. Yeah. And so I've been saying like we should have like this like REACH like program in other areas, like I don't know, like New York, Georgia, Baltimore, wherever else we can do. But yeah, I feel like that's at least within our worlds, like what we do. Then with CSR and D&I, they have these access programs where it's really helping folks, learn what it means to become a PA. And then as you know, you work your way up that way, and different union jobs and whatnot. So I can send you the link just to see if any of that is of interest, because then I can connect you with Karen Horn's team, and they can give you a sense of like where y'all could fit into that. If it's more of the local, like where you want to work with like our productions, you're here in Burbank, LA, or anyone where our shows are out on the streets, then that's when you would work with our teams.
So we would love, I think the one is great. The other part is that hands-on, even if it's a matter of you saying from a community outreach perspective, we can have some of these guys come and see it in real life, because it's nothing like, it wasn't until I was actually in a motion capture studio that I knew they did in a motion capture studio, and I understood what was happening behind the camera to make that movie that we thought about. And also, I had, you have no idea, who's that guy over there who's just doing light? Oh, that's the DP. That's why he's doing the light meter thing. Oh, he's really important, huh? But he's not doing anything but doing the light, but he's looking at the lighting because he's gonna look at what happens after it's shot. So nevertheless, it's hard to know without somebody to tell you. There's no playbook, right? You walk in that room. So how do you get some exposure and then also give them the system? Hey, that guy does this. Here's what it takes to be that guy. That guy does this. Here's what it takes to be that guy. At least if that's part of what could happen from an exposure perspective locally, that may help us to then, as you try to train people to say, well, now how do you get your hands on that software? And that's the other one, is also access to software and not, because those things are hard. I mean, say, hey, Devon, do you have Premiere, Cloud, or whatever? Maybe. I would doubt if he has Unreal Engine. How do we get somebody on some of those things, or Blender or animation? By the way, what's the pipeline of what it takes to get an animated piece from here to here? 2D art to 3D art to CGI. Nevertheless, knowing who does what and access to the tools of the trade. And then the other one is the union piece that I think is really interesting. What jobs are requiring union and what the benefits of being union. And by the way, how do you start stacking? I think you have to have hours to get in a union.
That's it.
You have to keep that. After you got to keep hours to stay in a union. The Ed Asner situation was horrible. But people need to understand, well, even if the president of if he doesn't keep his hours, he doesn't have health care.
That's right.
That's right. Well, so anyway, because again, we're talking about providing other resources, 360 resources for the apprentice.
Right. And that's where I started telling you about the Veterans and Entertainment Summit. So about 4 years ago, we had, we were working with a local veteran service organization. It was like, great, we're volunteering with veterans in the community, but we're like, what are we actually doing for the veterans who are, many of them underemployed, overemployed, right? And just having a hard time transitioning into civilian life. And so we basically called all our friends at the other studios and said, like, this is not an area of competition. Like, all of us could benefit from hiring more veterans in our workforce. And so we basically constructed like a 2-day summit where you'd learn all the different, everything we're talking about, right? And then we bring in nonprofits who could provide the wraparound services. So if accessing a suit for your interview is a barrier, like we're free headshots, like we took care of all of that because we understand, and there's so many other different challenges that can face getting the job and then staying in the job. So that's why we did it.
So you did that last year?
We've done it 4 years in a row, and it keeps growing. And every year we're adding new people. But we had like Call of Duty, we had like Deloitte come in, like people even out adjacent to our industry, because they're like, this is great. Like, this model could work for any community. In fact, right? It doesn't even have to be for veterans. It's because people don't understand the industry, and so when you don't, like, yes, access is an issue, but if you don't have the awareness, there's no even entry point. So that's what we're trying to do. You don't stay
employed if you don't get soft skills.
So using that as a study, we'd love to know what you've done with your content, your footage, your capture of all the things that you've done, so that we can cut it down and create some tool, some piece for more outreach to more veterans who are either in four-year university, alumni, and people who have not gotten the message that this resource is available. So we really look at it as product-based learning, that we can help these young guys create campaigns.
That's right. And I'd love to connect you with my friend Brian over at CW, because he and I worked on that Veteran Summit together when he was helping AT&T, and we've talked about that. It's kind of like the farm system for sports, right? Like, it's like the minor leagues. You're trying to bring them up to a point where they're ready for like the big, the big stage, but it requires all of that training and investment up front, and making sure that then they're connected to like the next group within the company that can help them, continue to evolve and and really succeed in the industry. So I hear what you're saying. Like, we've been talking about it nonstop, because we're like, it doesn't work because we're all trying to do our own thing in our own lane, but it's not connected, right? And when there's not a true pipeline, it's like you might be successful in your like lane, but the folks are not getting the jobs and staying in the industry.
I don't think the elephant in the room. Look, from a D&I perspective, I understand that I'm African American. I've been entertainment. I was the most senior executive at Redbox that was African American, and it wasn't until I exit interview that I was able to say, hey, here's some things that sort of exist in the corporate environment. I know you're about to be sold, and I know it's Apollo Global Management. And by the way, I've been an SVP before. I know what's happening. I've raised money. That wasn't what I was even considered to be a part of, and it's cool, happy to be there, just happy to be that guy. I had to take on the role though, as senior West African American, only one on the exec team, to represent all the African American employees at Redbox. And I had to tell them, you realize, because I'm the only one in the room, I have to speak for everyone who's not in the room.
Correct.
And that's a really hard place to be, navigate, and not necessarily, there's no safe spaces to go. HR maybe, but if I go to HR is gonna think I'm
We all make them
you cringe, right? The HR face says, oh, that dude's a problem. I'm not that guy. I'm just trying to navigate a situation with with people who might be able to help me in a confidential way to just be valuable in that employment environment. And I think that's the unsaid thing that in addition to all of these things, you have to be able to navigate in that kind of environment.
Minda Harts was here not too long ago, and we had that candid conversation. She wrote, those 3 bestsellers about just her experience as a woman of color in the corporate workspace, and we talked about that. It's like, it's the thing we're not allowed to talk about, but it's the very barrier that exists for us as people of color in the workforce, and it's nuanced for each group. But yes.
My chief strategy officer, person of color, he's Chinese American. We talked about it. We had to have the same conversations around the Asian hate situation that was happening. And at that point, we had a conversation about being African American and saying, hey, that's a thing, and that's horrible for anybody. But together, though, we together talk to the rest of the company about being, but not apart, right?
Yeah,
it was really him talking about that.
I agree.
We had to go together and say, hey, look. We can see each other. Y'all got to see. There's a lot of people out here, and whether it's LGBTQ, whether it's this, whether it's that, it's all part of the issue.
Because it breeds a scarcity mentality when it's like only one of us gets that spot, so we compete, right, for the attention, the resources. And I was like, this is never going to work. But if we band together, we have the numbers, right? Like we have the numbers.
We used to laugh, but he was also he's my man. So funny. I hired him out of B school. He was my manager most recently.
Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness!
I'm 15 years old.
Yeah.
But again, all this to say, those are the things that are real. Those are the things that I want to make sure that if you're the princess, if I'm sitting here, if I'm doing an honest job and talking about Damone and setting you up for success, I have to talk about all those things that's going to take you to play with, deal with in order to stay employed. When you can say something, when you shouldn't say something, who you go to, and how you navigate that, and how you figure out that next promotion, how you understand somebody. Sometimes somebody's just hating on you. And don't take that too seriously.
Yes. How do you separate that? Because that could become 90% of your experience.
You get a chip on your shoulder, and you get too emotional, you have to remember this is just business. And you have to be able to play, again, know the rules of engagement, understand the business. You can go outside and scream if you want. But when you're behind these walls, right?
I've done that a couple of times. Lock myself
Lock yourself in the closet, turn the music over and scream.
Right.
Again, the soft pieces, those are
And one of the things that I'd like to do for the group on the screen, we've done a lot of work with community colleges. That's kind of where Terrence and I got our feet wet after Compton Unified School District, and realizing the high school people just weren't work ready. They were too young, and no one's going to look at them as an internship or
that's why you're focusing on college.
Yes, we're looking for people who are ready to look for an economic opportunity.
That's right.
So, Ted Milner and I kind of worked with a group that was literally the recipients of a huge Department of Commerce grant. It was called LA High Tech.
Okay.
I don't know if you ever heard of it, but it went for the community colleges. It was a $500 million grant that sunset in 2018. And they were doing a lot of workshops and a lot of stuff that never delivered one job.
I know, that's the problem. We do
$500 million with the Department of Commerce and Labor. And so Ted was doing a lot of career workforce and readiness for these workshops. But I don't think a lot of those people who are making the decisions to bring this stuff into the classroom were bringing some of Ted's cautionary tales to these people who were, again, harder to place. So Ted, do you have any thing to comment on about, your perspective on where we are 2022, especially post-pandemic, about, getting people of color into especially entry-level positions, because they're not gonna, their first job's not gonna be writing, directing, producing.
No, right.
So Ted, anything that you can?
I guess my question was, Sally, are you familiar with us, with Executive Temps from our time at Disney? Did you ever engage with us much there?
I didn't.
No?
Who did you work with at Disney? I'm curious.
With source and procurement with
Oh.
Peggy out of ESPN.
Yeah.
So, but
Okay.
we've been, my wife is a former assistant to the chairman of NBC and the assistant to Paramount Pictures.
Okay.
And so from that perspective, we created a little over 30 years ago, Executive Temps to cater exclusively to entertainment. So we've placed thousands in the industry, hundreds that are executives now. We've serviced Warner Brothers and, you know, Disney and different studios, but eventually they start moving toward a different MSP model and a VMS model.
Yeah.
And so that becomes a little challenging for us as an agency. You know, we'll serve subsidiaries of that like CW as one of our clients we've been serving for a number of years.
Okay.
I guess my bigger question is, how does Kevin's vision assist you? Where are you having challenges? And how can we help you obtain your goals and what you're looking to do, and where are you having challenges doing them?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like in my previous role, I would say yes, because I used to hire, you know, whether it's a veteran group, like even for the summit, we hired those veterans to put together the content so they would get the experience. A lot of them are now working in the industry, and that's what I like to see, right? Because then it's like you're not forcing anything, it's more organic. You get the experience, and then you have a portfolio or resume to be able to kind of show. Now it's like, because we don't do a lot of like video promotion, but I think there's opportunity, right? Like even with our reach program, I'm like, it'd be nice if we could do a new video, but we, in a community engagement perspective, we don't have a large budget. So for me, if it's like giving somebody opportunity while we get what we need, which is like content to put out there to kind of promote our programs, like that's a win for me. So yeah, to answer your question, I can see opportunity there. Because, you know, in the past we have worked with other groups kind of doing a similar thing, like Ghetto Film School, where they produce like PSAs to kind of talk about like the dangers of youth smoking, when we were kind of involved in that type of work. And I think that's always great because, again, the young folks get exposure to our executives who are making those decisions, share about how they got into the work that they did, and then, you know, and then there's a little bit of more buy-in, right? Because you have that sort of face time. So I could see that, like for any programs like AME, anything Burbank related, like if we need video content, I could totally see that working, where we're hiring like Damone and, you know, your crew to produce the content. But I do wonder, from a, you know, going back to Maya's earlier question, like how much do you want to scale? Where else do you want to take this? I think that's the question for our CSR and D&I teams. I'll be candid, I think right now, because of the Discovery merger, like there's some tough decisions will be made in the next 2 to 4 weeks. But once we emerge from that, hopefully.
I heard the code in that conversation.
Yeah. Once we emerge from that, we will, I think the CSR team will have clear vision for like what they're focusing on. When we were under AT&T, it was definitely about the digital divide.
Right.
Like how do we, you know, make sure people have access to, like, to equipment or whatnot. I think we will revert back to storytelling. I'm pretty 100% sure finally. But what that actually means in terms of like how much money they have and how they're structured, we don't know yet. So that's where we are. But I'm like, we're a 100-year-old studio. We're not going anywhere. Like, it's going to come back. The pendulum's swung very aggressively this way, but hopefully it'll come back. But that's kind of where I see us right now.
Is there any qualification process that we need to go through in the meantime to be sort of an approved vendor or anything of that nature?
Would this be under the foundation as a 501c3?
It could be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that how you would structure the?
I believe that's going to provide more
Yeah.
History and,
Okay.
and relationship building.
Hopefully it
for us.
provides a tax write-off for you guys
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well
yeah.
to be able
Does that
to
help?
make money.
It does. I mean, it does. Like we can go either way, like operating or nonprofit.
Where's the budget better to
Is
go
that, and
after?
that's what we don't know, because everyone's budget is frozen right now. So even if I were to introduce you to the 2 other teams, they couldn't do anything in this fiscal year. But I suspect by January, like we'll have a sense of like
Got it.
what is our
So
budget.
fiscal is January?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, so everyone's kind of frozen. That's terrible. That's why I was like, here's the swag that I have. I'll donate a lot if you want that. But it's really lean right now. But
Is there access to content and maybe events between now and the end of the year to become acquainted with the process, even though it would not to be funded? Like meaning, is there anything coming up between now and the end of the year? If you looked at Veterans Day or something else, is there something where, again, just as we did for AME, on the money that the Moon would have now, is there a way that we could do a entry program that would be the example, so you can show someone, hey, here's what we would ask you to invest in, and your fiscal budget is available.
Right.
Is there something we can work on together between now and then?
Well, we are doing the Veterans Summit again.
Okay.
And
When is that?
it's gonna be November 8th and 9th with like a gala on the 10th. So I think I'll have to talk to the other studios. So what's great about this from an exposure standpoint is like I've mentioned, like 12 groups are in, right? This is everyone from
Well, this
Amazon
is
Studios,
all the studios.
Paramount,
All the studios.
Call
okay.
of Duty, like everybody.
Yes.
Assuming they all still have budget, I still have to reach out. But if there's an opportunity there, I can.
We would love to be a crew that could come in and do what Timon did for the AME for that event. Follow those 3 days. Capture it. Use that as a way to give a recap.
Right.
Follow that up. Everybody leaves by December, first week of December anyway, but we can wrap something before you have that. So therefore, we'd be set up to say, we've worked with them. Because I don't want to come in just sort of asking somebody to trust in the process. I'd rather be able to say, hey, we worked together. You got us the first client that we delivered with, you got us to deliver something back for you. We will have completed something twice. And then we have something to show for it. And hopefully the second one, it's got all the studios. It's going to help us just get exposure.
And I feel like that's a good opportunity. And I'll introduce you to Betty from VetNet at Paramount. But it's like we need that promo video to talk about what we do to sort of globally.
We could bring veterans. I mean, there's lots of, if you talk about outreach and we know ahead of time, if you let us know the subject matter, we could for sure incorporate. I mean, we were dealing with Veterans Day with the Buffalo Soldiers. I'll show you, we did a whole 1 hour piece from the Union Bank that I paid for for us to produce. But we came up with an hour, and I had my friend Richard Canton, who's an actor, and he interviewed an ex-Tuskegee Airman on the phone, and we had a former general going great. Anyway, that's something that I think falls in our wheelhouse.
Yes. And if you have veterans that work in the entertainment industry that you want them to be part of the summit as speakers, we can work that out. We've done that. We had General Lucky, the head of, he retired from Army Reserve, but we've had some very impressive folks, Jim Axelrod interviewed him. And so we always just try to bring in veterans wherever they are that have worked in the industry or currently do. Again, it's about that representation.
Well,
right?
Richard, so was funny. The 3 people who got here for this thing all ended up understanding that the gentleman he was a veteran from the Air Force. The other person who's a historian, he was also a veteran. And then, of course, we're talking to generals and other veterans. So just so happened, everybody were all veterans, and that was a camaraderie they were able to share.
I love that.
And we learned through the process. And we can also highlight, again, we've been focused on veterans from a people of color perspective, but there's always ways to highlight some of those. I mean, we had the oldest living Tuskegee Airman in LA until Ted passed and the rest, but there's history and things that we'd love to, I think it's in our wheelhouse. But it may be something we could do. I think we could do a great job of making that an exemplary piece.
Okay.
That'd be
I'll
my
introduce you to Betty. She's my planning partner in all of this, but she's great, and she works for Paramount under Rich, who's head of tax over, in case you know any of these players. I feel like everyone knows each other. It's like a 3-degree separation, but and honestly, because it has mostly all of the studios, we'll see if Disney comes on board. They have their own summit.
You need to guilt them into it.
Well, they had their own, and they had Dr. Biden. I was like, good for you all.
Okay.
So we thought we were gonna play
it was like
together.
Sure, they just flew in the Joint Chiefs of Staff. No big deal.
That's all. So,
Can I ask a quick question? So is the work that you're doing with veterans, is that with other studios, is it sort of formalized with the other studios so that there's sort of a consortium?
It is, yeah. So
because
Go ahead.
Because I'm just wondering if if we think about sort of moving ahead and understanding that there's sort of this freeze, right? And I think it's great to do something in the interim, but one of the things that I've really enjoyed working with groups on is cohort programs, so that you're bringing in groups and there's a sort of a consortium of organizations. And so, instead of it being just Warner Brothers, there's, 12 different organizations that are involved in something. So you have 12 times the impact. You can, work with 12 times the number of students. And at the end, one of the benefits that I see for the organizations themselves is that they end up with this pool of talent that they can look at. And it's not just the individuals that they sponsored or worked with particularly, but it's that whole pool.
Yes.
And everyone really benefits. And the organizations that I've worked with in the past that have been sort of targeted at, kind of higher end positions. So people that are coming out looking for MBAs or that are coming out with their MBAs, they have phenomenal placement rates. So they end up with anywhere from 95 to 90 to 99% job placement rates for the folks that do that, because the programs work really nicely together. And everybody's sort of, and, so if one studio doesn't have room for, forgive me, I'm not a Hollywood type, but if one studio doesn't have room for people in a particular field, another studio might, and kind of vice versa. So everybody sort of wins out that way. So I'm just wondering if there's a way before we hit sort of the next fiscal year, if we could think about sort of making that consortium something to build out.
Yeah, I mean, I'll share that with that summit. That's exactly why we brought in the other studios, because I was like, not one studio is hiring enough veterans. So our hope was like, if you're kind of still in the nascent stages where you don't even have a veteran BRG, there's no concerted like talent, recruiter who's trying to look at that talent pool, then that's where you are, and we'll meet you there, right? But like being part of this summit, kind of we're sharing best practices and hoping that they're learning things right from the other studios about what to do. So I agree with you. I think there's a way we can say and I'll have to talk to Betty about this and just say, of course, we want to give veterans the opportunity to like produce content for the summit itself. But what about the behind the scenes, like how the summit was put together? Maybe there's an opportunity for another group to kind of benefit, and whether you bring veterans or just, young folks who are like looking for opportunity. And I think that way you almost have your like, here's a card to kind of show each of the studios. And I think, I can already just see with Paramount, Fox, that a conversation could be helpful there,
How much of your outreach and participation have been through people who are students actually at community college who are veterans, or CSUs that are veterans? Because they have resource centers that basically we haven't tapped into, but we plan to.
I agree. So, I mean, I think our HR group, they work directly with the different HBCUs, different community colleges. They have a list of schools that they work with that I'm happy to share, so you kind of understand what partnerships already exist. And then I think our DEI and CSR groups also have a list. We have not sourced directly from local colleges just because we're not hiring folks, but for the veterans, they usually come through nonprofits like Veterans in Media and Entertainment. Yeah. And NOVAC is the other group we work with to source PAs out of New Orleans. So I think that's where I can see a role for y'all. If you're working directly with the community colleges and sourcing students and potential talent, then the studio can work directly with you, right, as a place to incubate kind of the talent or resources. I mean, that's one way we've approached it. Otherwise, we can have.
Are you doing that? You said are you doing it in Atlanta as well as well?
I mean, it's weird because we thought with Turner being headquartered there that they'd have more, but it's not. It's really paltry. I'm being very confidential, but open.
All the made in Georgia. I mean, you look at so much production happening there, all the incentives, and you look at the disproportionate amount of the population that.
Correct.
You could.
I don't understand. I really thought Turner would have been far more like invested, but when I look at the numbers, it's just not. And so we've tried. We've worked with the film office. We're like, we should be doing more. And so there's like a set training program we gave some money to. But I agree. It's like a lot of times it's just checkbook philanthropy where we write a check.
Gave it the office.
Right. So it could be better.
I appreciate your candor.
Yeah.
But I mean, those are the opportunities for I mean, again, if you think about, Ted's working with HBCU, folks there, and then there's the Atlanta AU Center.
Yeah,
And so there may be a pipeline that already may exist that we could tap into if folks in the area
Right,
to activate something, right? So
right.
we could look at some of the resources.
oh, so you guys are national then?
Oh, yeah, well, that's why we
okay.
registered federally for our
We-
apprenticeship.
we- Yeah, so federally, that was the first approval that we got, and literally I got an email while
Yeah.
we're here talking about the
Really?
state approval process with community colleges. But again, I think when you talk about this kind of an opportunity, it's about disenfranchised communities
Mhm.
on a national level.
Yeah,
Because ultimately everybody wants to sort of come here, but you know what it's like to get here and stay
Right.
here. But
And
also
that's
social
why-
production.
and that's why we're saying you don't have to come to LA.
Right.
Yes, there are a lot of jobs here, but a lot of our shows are out
Look
in
at all the
those
studios
communities.
in,
Yes.
like, I mean,
Yeah,
Atlanta area has boomed
yes.
with production facilities. And I
yes.
know folks who've worked on shows that are HBO shows and other shows, and these shoot, I'm like, why are you going back to, or Chicago?
Yeah, or Chicago.
Chicago's
exactly,
another, and there's
major
community outreach, so Redbox, we're in Oakwood Terrace, we had outreach
yeah.
all over Chicago as
Yes.
Redbox.
hub.
So I'm super familiar with the
Mhm.
outreach you did there, and my fear is now that they're acquired, maybe that goes by the wayside. But not to me that we don't have people that we could reach out to if we had the auspices of what we do with them.
Yeah.
Of what's that program look like, and how,
Yeah.
and those may be places where we could use just resources we have
Right.
to go with initiatives. Again, getting back to where are
Mhm.
there places that are holes that could be filled.
I see the opportunity for the foundation. It's like the EPKs, right? Like if you can get your students to produce content, like behind the scenes, like very community based kind of work, like that's the perfect opportunity. I just don't think it's quite hit PR in the same way. Maybe that's what we can drive a little bit. Yeah.
And some goodwill. I mean, look, it
Yeah.
does not
Yeah.
hurt
Yeah.
to make sure that as you're coming into the community and you're taking your resources and all the rest, that you are providing the kinds of things, or listening. It
Correct.
may just be reflecting the voice of the community
Right.
at first.
Right.
And there's content around that. I mean, there's concepts in Chicago where they're talking about health inequity. And so I worked with the American Cancer Society for Redbox to address health inequity in Chicago, only because they could show that within this many miles of each other, the life expectancy was 30 years different.
Oh,
So nevertheless,
wow.
these were initiatives
Yeah.
that from a Redbox perspective,
Yeah.
we saw. So there's ways that we might be able to utilize those same kind of models.
Mhm.
Well, with the few minutes that we have left,
Is someone trying to join or do we lose? somebody?
well,
Oh.
yeah, we're running out of time. How much time do you have left? I mean, 'cause
I
we're up
think
at two.
yeah, we should be good. I
Okay,
don't have.
So
something meeting
I
yet,
wanted
so,
to check in because the areas of interest for our federal
Mhm.
registered apprenticeship program,
Yeah,
obviously we want to hit the state level with our community partnership,
Yeah.
community college partnership, but we're really looking to
Mhm.
have impact where there's growth.
okay,
And some of the things that we believe would growth there in the areas that Lemur is
Mm-hmm.
working with, who started Valence, but now is working with Oregon Foundation,
okay,
Web3.
yeah.
So Lemur, can you kind of chime in a little bit about where you think things are going in terms of workforce in media to, again, incorporate the Web3 stuff that you guys are doing?
Sure. I mean, I think they're very adjacent to a lot of the native skills that are already being built around content production, around the digitization of artifacts and media. You know, for instance, when we've been talking about your project, Kevin, around the soldiers and some of the memorabilia, the militaria that exists, there's a whole pedagogy around how we bring those into the metaverse that is fascinating and very accessible if we get the program pipeline set up. And so having someone, at the ready to bring some projects to the table that we can either take photography or other generated assets into the systems. The whole world of Web3 is quite expansive and inclusive. So I think, a lot of what we're trying to do is to make sure that the clients at scale that we serve,
Yeah.
that they have an easy set of tools to use, and we can talk more about that later. But a lot of what we're talking about folds nicely and blends the interest level, particularly for this next set of generations that are coming through around the kind of traditional media production models and the new media production models.
Mhm.
And it's got a lot of great potential. So I don't know if I'm answering your question or not, Kevin, but we've got a lot of things that we were talking about in terms of getting some really practical pilot projects set up to really kind of show these things in action.
Yeah. And so what would like a successful partnership like look like for you? I know earlier it's like sort of what does a win look like from, our team, but what does a successful partnership, has it looked like or should look like?
Ultimately, as a talent search firm, I want to recruit more talent.
Okay.
And I want to be able to see how I can get you guys to help me penetrate into the classrooms.
Okay.
Because again, all the recruitment, I don't care if it's HR or you have recruiters, how do you really get to the people like Damone? And we think we have the secret sauce to be able to get those instructors and faculty to give us those people who are the kind of candidates who will be apprentices.
Okay.
And that's what I would hope in a perfect world, would help you guys get to those people in the classroom.
Okay. And so just as a takeaway, it sounds like it'd be like a monthly retainer or some sort of like monthly funding for like projects or like as key projects come
An
up.
experience.
And the experience. that
Yeah,
goes with
it would
that,
be
yeah.
curriculum based,
Sure.
competency based. And obviously at the end of the process, we want to be able to provide reports and show progression of all these people towards the goals that we've set forth and the standards we have.
Yeah,
But you guys, that's why I want you guys to participate in what are the outcomes.
right. And is there like a conversion goal? Because I know Maya talked about like a 90 to 95%. That's an impressive placement. Because
Yeah.
even for our REACH program, we're like 50%. We're lucky. We've been hovering around 33, but that's even seen as like, wow, that's pretty high. And I was like, shouldn't it be 100? Because we spend a lot of money on these
I don't know how
students.
many people too.
Yeah.
It's really how big the world is.
Yeah.
Just to get at,
Yeah.
because today, just to be clear, we're at apprentice 1.
Mhm.
But it is about exposure and adding to the pipeline. I think the win would be a successful pathway,
Right.
and then increase the amount of people we can get into the apprentice program that are qualified, that are heading in that pathway, in order to look at then what the measurement might be from that, and then use best practices. To your point, how would so Damone's you have a year left. You graduate in May.
Yeah.
So again, a goal. Look, I'll tell you, the selfish goal would be he graduates in May and actually has a job offer or something in a skill set that's there. That'd be success as of where we started, right?
That is exactly the formula: certification, graduation, job.
Okay.
And unfortunately, a lot of the partners don't have that formula, because that's what a lot of people who are looking for talent, they look for those things that are, let's say, lower, they're low barrier things to, again, present people who are going to create success stories that we're looking for. But for those people who are further away from that model, we're looking at pre-apprenticeship.
I see. Okay.
And I think the point you made before would be, just some monthly kind of a piece that we're engaged in, whether it's that month there's nothing happening, but there's content that we say, hey, here's our thing for the month, and here's what our project for the month is.
Yeah.
And again, real client relationship, right?
Yeah.
This is our client. We have to have a meeting to kick off the month.
Right.
What's our project this month? What do we need to do?
And here's
And then here's the creative brief.
Yeah.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
All that, right? Okay, great. What do we need to deliver next week? Great. Here's our idea. Here's what we think. We're gonna deliver X. And if we could just month in, month out, do that for a 12-month window, that would be super. I believe that then quantifying what we're able to deliver from that and packaging that. And then our job would be, how do we get more people in so there's not just Damone doing all the work? I mean, our goal would be, how do you have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people? Because we envisioned a team. So Damone did a lot of work on his own, but there was no audio help. There was no graphics person.
He was a one-man band.
So he did it all. I mean,
The
I'm so
modern-day
proud.
Predator.
I'm bragging on like whatever, but I'm so proud that he did it all. 16 takes, 16 edits.
16 edits within a 10-day period of time.
Yeah.
So the work ethic is one of the things that we're looking for these people to learn, and how to deliver to a real client.
Right.
She was totally impressed, and she's like, no objection, guy. She's in Damone, so that he'd do it in an hour later and say, can you review it? She's like, nobody does anything in an hour.
No.
Maybe I'll turn it around in the day tomorrow.
Maybe.
And the day tomorrow is usually the best commitment anybody's
And
gonna
it'll
make.
cost me $12,000.
Oh yeah, and that's a rush.
But so he is really what we're looking for, is how the real proof of principle is, can a person produce a product
Right.
on spec?
Right.
And
On
if they
time,
on
on
time, on
budget.
budget. If they can't do that, then they're
Right.
not going to be able to check the boxes.
Right.
And
Yeah.
more importantly, if they learn the business of it.
Well, and also, to be fair,
Mhm.
we have to check boxes on the skills that we're providing. So in order to be certified for the federal program and the state program,
Okay.
they're asking us, are you teaching this? Did he edit that? Yes.
Right.
Did he? So we're checking a bunch of boxes
I see.
on the requirements
Yeah.
as we do this.
Yeah.
So we have to have a subject matter or have some project basis that says, hey, so here's what we got to check is the boxes that we need to make sure the project.
Yeah.
Because can we make sure we do some audio? Can we make sure we
Right.
do some posts? Can we make sure we have some script writing with you to understand what should happen?
Right.
These are things that will help us check boxes that we've actually trained someone who can, because we have to say they're
Mm-hmm.
proficient. The only way you're going to become proficient is not doing it once, but having the repetitive opportunity to continue to do so. So that's why I think it's important for us to have like a 12-month kind of commitment, even if it's light, right? But
Yeah.
it's one thing a month, because by going through that process, I think we will come on the other side.
Well, yeah, and what we're required to do is to provide a certain amount of curriculum, 144 hours of curriculum, 2,000 hours of actual paid experience or competency boxes that are checked off.
So, so 2,000 hours, we did the math, is a little over 1 year, 40 hours a week. So they said to us, it can be either the 2,000 hours or we have to check the box that they have gotten the competency of a particular skill set, which is like a video producer, I think is what we have.
Right.
It's all, and so really, we're gonna have to certify, but the only way I'm gonna certify is if the client, if you say, no, Terrence's work was proficient in these skills, because that's the checkoff that says, now thank you, we delivered to a client on time, on spec, so that we can go back and say, yes, and it's not just us vouching for the fact that Timon has learned this, it would be, it's been proven and client proven. That's so that's to keep us beyond reproach and making sure that we're running the right kind of a program.
I see,
Right,
got it.
right.
And I've heard this from a couple film offices too, where seemingly this is the magic number, the 144.
Hours,
Okay,
yeah.
interesting, yeah.
Yeah, and so, you know, the goal, aside from them getting the project completed, and being able to almost reverse engineer it and explain how they did it.
Yeah,
It's not a pitch, it's a
Yeah.
reverse pitch to
Yeah.
explain, you know,
yeah,
and get everything down to a process where they can replicate it to a client, customize it.
yeah.
Those are the things that we believe are the skill and the mindsets that are missing from some of the
Okay.
students, because they're not exposed to them in a classroom environment.
Right,
Who's going to teach them how a client or an
No, I
agency
know.
really works?
I heard this from the teachers.
And they may not ever go into an
Yeah.
agency, but they need to learn how someone
Yeah.
delivers, you know, the
Mhm.
business
Yeah,
to its end.
Well, thank you. NAPI gives the producers, you get pitch sessions and all the rest, right? So you get a NAPI pitch, and you go into a room with a NAPI pitch, and they all say yes, and they'll nod. You go into a real pitch?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think we have projects like that already in the
Right,
back right now. I don't think we're
right.
Thank
It's
you very
so
much. We appreciate you.
Yeah.
But again, it is that reality, and coming from the space and knowing that we really want to bridge the gap, right? This is not doing it just to get some foundation money and do some stuff and say you did something.
Yeah,
It really is more legacy building or building an opportunity or a pathway that truly does provide people
Yeah.
who can be. There's one person who went through the Prince program that you're speaking of who has gotten a job at BET.
Yeah,
So
oh,
she
yeah.
went through Laugh Out Loud. So she's a prototype of another program, but we're using her as like a mentor. So she chimed in and gave Damone comments from that perspective. Somebody
Yeah.
who was matriculated through another system.
right.
Yeah. And what we'd love to do, because we wanted to, you know, really hear more from you. And I think what we'd love to do is to be able to come back from what we've heard and talk about a pilot that would allow us to do a monthly activity with a group of students. So
Right.
we have portfolios, resumes, and people who would be on the team
Yeah.
delivering the work. And, you
Yeah.
know, looking at being able to scale this thing, you know, we talked to people about Gladio and some other folks that need to see that there is something a little bit more capable of showing real-time, real-world experiences. This is kind of how I believe we can show the state of California, who's really putting a lot more emphasis on apprenticeship,
I see. Yeah.
as well as the feds.
Mhm.
The city and the county, not so much.
Mm.
So the state is really pushing apprenticeship, and you know, for us, there is a lot of funding.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that can actually help build credibility for
Right.
everything we're doing. And so we believe we're going to be on the right side of helping
Yeah.
the city and the county and other cities and counties to
Yeah.
figure out
Yeah.
how to get more innovative. and building workforce.
And I like where you're going with this, because we've also said, like, if I always go to like the productions or internal studio and said, hey, we need you to carve out money to pay the salary for, you know, X intern, they're like, nope, sorry, not gonna happen. But if they're like, hey, the state or the feds or somebody is giving you money and all we have to do is provide the experience, then people are willing to try it out, and later they'll pay for it themselves.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened with our REACH program. So
Love
it's
that.
Well, you know Allison, right?
yes,
Yeah, so
yeah.
we're going to be talking to Allison about making sure that we're in the best practices of state
Good.
and federal.
Right, 'cause she's
So she-
getting a lot of money.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
she's working with us to
Yeah.
make sure that we get the state part down. We went to the
I
federal
see,
part
I
really
see.
quickly, and she
Got
was
it, got it.
amazed at
Yeah,
how we got through it.
yeah.
But
That was the email that just came through. So they introduced us to Ha, who's the state, and so we now. So our next step, and so I'll back up. If there is a community college in this area that you have a program where you say we should
Yeah.
go, we know
You
our
said Santa
doors, Santa
Monica,
Monica.
yeah.
I mean, we're really open
Yeah.
to what does it take to check the boxes.
Yeah. The only one I know is like, just because like a board member from Burbank sits on the board for ELAC, and so that's the only
Mm.
connection that I'm aware
East LA?
of. But yeah,
Sure.
uh-huh.
East Los Angeles, yeah.
Yeah,
They don't have a really robust digital media
they
program
don't. They
at all.
don't.
I mean,
That's
I-
a challenge.
yeah.
I'm like, you might be able to film at your college, but I don't know. that
But whatever
there's-
checks the
yeah,
boxes, we can
yeah.
bring, because for LA Promise, we're bringing people along who
Mm.
are coming from that program who may not be the, you know, who might have the capacity at the moment, but they're
Yeah.
going to learn. They're going to be the free apprentices.
And I think that's helpful to understand which nonprofits you're also working with, just to see if there are any partners that we work with, because then I can sort of build the story narrative around that too. But okay.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
helpful.
yeah, and that's where we really want to be is an aggregator of efforts, not competing with.
Correct.
with
Correct.
people.
I'm with you.
So,
you.
you know,
Yes.
the
yeah.
goal is to try to find out who
Mm.
your existing partners are
Yeah.
and work with that talent to bring them along the process.
Right. And that's what we did with Access to Action. I actually piloted that program before it became a CSR program.
Oh,
But
okay.
I remember I had a boss who's like, over my dead body, you're going to get all these people on these shows. Like, people are scared in the writer's room. And I was like, over your dead body. Okay, we'll do this. And so, so it was like the first year, it was like 7 PAs across, like actually 14 PAs across 7 major shows across the country.
Okay.
But it just required finding the right people on each show, right?
Yes.
The EPM, the department head that was like, I
Yes.
care about mentorship. This is not just some check the box like D&I program. Like I really need you to care, because I don't want them to be othered. Right? 'Cause the minute they're othered, they might get the job to check the box, but they're not going to stay in the industry. So
Oh.
we need to like normalize and socialize this like outside of those structures. And so it worked, but of course now it's a
No, but
D&I
Thank you
program.
for saying that, though. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
you do have to find people who care, right? You need to find, Kevin's
Yeah.
word is always the coalition of the willing,
Mhm.
right? People on the phone here
Intentionality
show
is
up,
everything.
movie
Yeah,
drive, you know what I mean?
yeah.
That's the, you know what I mean? Look,
Yeah.
we're doing this no matter what, because I care. I want to see other people who look like me
Yeah.
be in positions
That's
that I've been in the room. So that's just part of
Right.
the process.
Yeah.
But finding the right talent, the right people to find that could, I mean, even one of them,
One, yeah.
even
yeah.
one somewhere within the organizational structure could help to us to build something because they're committed.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
and the
Yeah.
bottom line is that if no one hires them, I'll hire them. I have my own productions.
Oh, wow.
I have my
I
own
see.
film productions,
see.
and you know we're working on
Mm.
some minting of curriculum and not curriculum artifacts and things. So
Oh,
I have a lot of work that
Yeah.
I can get people on.
Amazing. Okay. But if I can be helpful in making interest to any of the other studios too, please let me know. I'm sure you're already working with them, but like.
Betty at BetNet.
Well,
I got it right here.
That is really our next step. So guys, at the end, is there anything that you know you guys want to weigh in on next steps? Do we send back a proposal, or do we, you know, have another, you know, if we do anything, what's our ask?
Would that be helpful to you if there was something that was sort of at least a sort of a more formal scope of work?
I always like to tell nonprofits, like, don't spend all that time creating these like big things. Like if there's just like a one sheet or a few bullet points of like, what is it? What's the ask? Who needs to be bought in on our end? Then at least it gives me sort of a playbook of like who I need to get the buy-in from and how much it's going to cost. So yeah, you don't need to build anything super like formal, but like anything that I can sort of send around,
We can
socialize.
compress the last 30 years into 1 or 2
Well, look,
pages.
Yeah.
let's digest the notes though. I think there's some key pieces from the notes, and I think what we need to do is
Yeah.
regroup internally on the notes that we have and come back to you with sort of
Yeah.
the one sheet brief recap
Right.
of at least here's what we heard.
Right.
We've done this before, right?
Right,
Here's what we think might
Yeah.
happen.
And our proposal was fast-tracked to the feds because it was written by a gentleman that I think we all know. His name is Jay Tucker. He is he runs the UCLA's management MBA program at the Anderson School of Business,
Yeah.
sports entertainment marketing.
Oh, okay.
And so he wrote the
Okay.
manifesto for what it is. We drilled down to a couple of pages. It's
Oh,
called the
amazing.
Digital Pathway Initiative. It's storytelling, it's tech, media, financial management. I mean, you know, there's these pillars are the things that help us understand how we
Yeah.
plan on doing, you know, the pillar post for our delivery.
Yeah, yeah. And again, like if it's like helpful to work with folks in post-production, kind of like you pilot it, even if it's not like a big enterprise program, let me know, because we have friendlies like in every department, and sometimes we go rogue and do our own thing, because I'm like, by the
Well-
time I get the approval, it's never gonna happen.
Well, I know
so-
one of the asks is that if you guys do have people who can volunteer time, we still want to take them and put them in the classrooms.
Okay,
Speakers,
easy.
and you know, with COVID, you know, notwithstanding, if there's any chance to do any job shadowing for some of
Yeah.
our students,
Yeah,
you know, if
yeah,
if
the
that's still
COVID
there.
protocol, it makes it challenging, but
Yeah.
I hear where you're going with
Yeah.
that, like if it does open up, yeah.
Yeah, and
Okay.
then eventually the last thing is we have something called conference as curriculum.
Mhm,
So we bring students to inside baseball conferences like Mobile World Congress,
mhm.
CES,
Oh,
and the
wow.
other ones that are now opening back up because, you know,
Mhm.
they're opening up
I
because we
know.
bring them in as backpack journalists so that they can cover and meet and interview
I love
people like
that.
you.
Yeah, it was great how you guys structured that. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Cool.
No, this is great.
So guys, any last questions, suggestions, or comments before we break? Oh,
No, it was just
Only
fantastic.
thing I
to-
would, oh, sorry, go ahead, Lamar.
No, you have it.
I was just going to say, I think the intro to other studios would be fantastic.
Happy to do it. I know all the CSR folks, so if you ever need, yeah, to break in, we always.
wow,
throw it to
that
each
would be
other.
powerful to our apprenticeship program.
Yeah.
I mean, collaboration is unheard of.
'Cause everyone needs to do it. That's how
Unheard
things
of.
move here.
Unheard of.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody, Lemur?
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's fantastic to meet you both, and also, you know, the thinking around keeping this in a modular format around the different kind of pathways and sub pathways is something I think we'll try to shoot for. So it's
Yeah.
a menu for you guys to kind of consider when we come back.
Yeah, no, I like that. Yeah, I think that's a little bit more like digestible if we could start like a proof of concept in like one group, and then scale from there. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. And
Anybody else before we
Yeah.
break? Now or never.
Well, no, we keep it open. Not now or never. I don't work that way. So anytime you have follow-up questions, yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you
I know
guys.
you're busy, so
Thank you all.
Yeah,
All right, thank you guys.
All right, take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
very nice to meet you.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow.
No, I didn't know if there's someone trying to.
Yeah,
get
there
in.
was, and I didn't, yeah, it was kind of tough for me to not bring her in because it was a little abrupt in bringing